Sorry about that. All right, we are live now. Sorry about that. I did not hit the live button and I was talking. So, welcome to our study session on Theologia. I'm glad you've taken your time to be with us today. Sorry about the delay in starting the session. We had some technical issues and I thought that we have to cancel, but somehow everything started working. Sometime a restart the system does wonders. I was trying different setup and different things, and then I simply restarted and it all started working. Let's go straight into our subject for this evening. We're going to talk about who is Jesus according to Hinduism. We're going to talk about who is Jesus according to Hinduism. Now, we live in a country where the major religion is Hinduism. More than 80% of people in India follow Hinduism. So it's important for us to understand how they see Jesus, because how they see Jesus is going to be the way they are also going to see us. So in this series, we're going to study on that today. Who is Jesus according to Hinduism? So Hinduism is the third largest religion in the world with about 800 million followers. The first is Christianity, and second comes Islam, and third is Hinduism. So Hinduism is a dominant faith in our country, in India. Also, Hinduism is found in other nations like Bangladesh, Bhutan, Fiji, Mauritius, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Suriname, and Trinidad. In those countries, it is found. Now, although it is found in those countries, its influence reaches even to the West, even to many other countries, because there are Hindus that are living in different parts of the world. It is estimated that in North America alone, there are 1 million Hindus living. So there are Hindu temples in the US, there are Hindu temples in the Middle East, there are Hindu temples all over the world. So Hinduism is a religion that has spread far and wide. It is the third largest religion in the world. So today, as we look at this subject, who is Jesus according to Hinduism, before we go into that, we have to look at what Hinduism is, what are their beliefs, and learn some details about their religion so that we can have a better understanding on their perspectives about Jesus. The first thing we're going to look at is the origins of Hinduism. Now, Hinduism does not have an individual founder. Now, when it comes to Christianity, we always look back to Jesus as the chief cornerstone, as the founder sort of figure. But in Hinduism, there is no individual founder. Scholars typically trace its origins to 1500 BC in what is known now as India. Now, before I go into details, I want to make this disclaimer that the details that I found are from some sources that I have, some books that I own, and also I use websites like CARM Apologetics to get all the material. So there may be certain inaccuracy, certain things that are not correct in what I'm saying, but that's just the information that is available. To just verify it, go do your own research. So what I'm sharing is not the authoritative details on Hinduism. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm just talking about Hinduism to help us understand their perspective on Jesus. All right. So Hinduism does not have an individual founder. Scholars usually trace the origins of Hinduism to about 1500 BC, that is even before Christ came to this world. It began as a polytheistic and a ritualistic family of religions with various sacred rites that were performed by the heads of particular household or tribes. But as time went on, rituals became increasingly complicated, and there was a need to have certain people who were specialized to conduct those rituals. And that is when the system of priests came into place. Now, during this period, the Vedas were developed and later written down to instruct the priests on how to perform these rituals. So, now, there were a group of Hindus who emphasized a lot on ritualistic, on rituals in their religion, and those were the Hindus who became priests, and priests were the means by which Hindus could appease their gods. And over time, what happened was priests became incredibly powerful people in the Hindu religion. And around 600 BC, there were a group of people who pushed back against it and said, no, we don't want priests to control everything. So later, a form of Hinduism emerged that focused more on private meditation as opposed to external rituals. Around 800 to 300 BC, the Upanishads were written, and the Upanishads can be loosely described as Hinduism's New Testament. Like similar to how we have a New Testament, the Hindus have something called as the Upanishads. But what do they contain? What do the Upanishads contain? The Upanishads expound on the idea that behind many gods that they serve, there is one ultimate reality known as Brahman. Now, who is Brahman? Brahman is an impersonal essence that is the basis of all existence. So, Hindu thinkers at that time began to understand Brahman as Nirguna, which means without attributes or qualities. But after the writings of Upanishads, the Hindu conception of Brahman continued to develop. The writers who put together the Upanishads began to present Brahman as something more like a personal god. So, Nirguna Brahman became Saguna Brahman. So that is Brahman with attributes. So earlier Brahman was called as Nirguna. They understood him as Nirguna, which means without attributes. But later, with the help of Upanishads, he was known as Saguna Brahman, which is Brahman with attributes. So the personalized form of Brahman is also called as Ishvara. The personalized form of Brahman is also called as Ishvara. Now, Ishvara became known to humanity through the Tirumurti, which is three manifestations of Brahman. That is known as Brahman the creator, Vishnu the preserver and sustainer, and third, Shiva the destroyer. So these are three manifestations of Brahman. Brahma the creator, Vishnu the preserver or a sustainer, and third, Shiva the destroyer. Now, each of these deities have at least one Devi, that is a divine spouse. So if you look at Ishvara, Ishvara became personified through incarnations of Vishnu known as avatars. Now, there are several avatars. I'll list them out later in the session. Now, epics such as Ramayana and Mahabharata, which includes Bhagavad Gita, tell story about these avatars. In addition to the Tirumurti, there are 10 primary avatars of Vishnu, and there are over 330 million gods or other gods in Hinduism. Now, later what happened is there were certain schools of thought that came up, and they started sharing different opinions on nature of the physical universe. Now, some said, listen, the physical place or the universe in which or the earth we live in is not real. It's only an illusion. Okay, so there were a couple of groups that came up. One group were called as the non-dualists or Advaita. They see Brahman alone as real. Everything else is an illusion. You and I are an illusion. The place we live in is an illusion. The only thing that is real is Brahman. That was the view of the non-dualists or Advaita. There was another group called the qualified non-dualists, or I don't know how to pronounce this term, but let's just call them non-dualists. The non-dualists affirm the reality of the universe. Basically they say the universe is real, but it is only an extension of Brahman rather than a separate thing. That is how they saw it. The next one is dualists. Dvaita, D-V-A-I-T-A. They see Brahman and the universe as two distinct realities. Okay, so three groups: non-dualists, they see only Brahman is real, everything else is an illusion. The other one is the qualified non-dualists. They say the universe is real, but it is only an extension of Brahman rather than a separate thing. The third group, the dualists or the Dvaitas, said Brahman and the universe are real, but they are two different entities, two different realities. All right. So these were the schools of thought that came up in Hinduism as time went on. Now, there are different types of Hindus that we must learn about, because every Hindu that we see may not be the same kind of Hindu that we can read about and understand. The one group of Hindus we see is that there are certain Hindus that follow Hinduism as a cultural heritage. Like, parents have been following it. Our society is a Hindu society, so we have to be Hindu. So they have a certain view. So it's more of a cultural heritage for them. But most likely they won't be practicing, or most likely they won't be practicing their Hindu faith. It's just a cultural heritage for them. The other group of Hindus are intellectual Hindus. Now, these intellectual Hindus often take textual history of Hinduism very seriously. And these are the kind of Hindus that are very well versed in the Hindu scriptures, such as the Vedas or the Upanishads. And often, such Hindus are very knowledgeable in Hindu philosophical schools of thought and practice. These are the intellectual Hindus. The other one is a group of Hindus called as the folk Hindus. Such men and women, they practice Hinduism with rituals, traditions and customs with an emphasis on local and household deities. Now remember how it began. It began with household deities, rituals and things that are done inside the house. Now folk Hindus practice that. They believe in rituals and traditions and customs that were done earlier, and they believe that should be followed even to this very day. So they emphasize on local and household deities. They frequently offer sacrifices to the gods and observe various festivals, and also they practice astrology, magic, ancestor worship, and they venerate idols and make offerings to appease spirits, among many other practices. So three groups of Hindus. One is a group that sees Hinduism as a cultural heritage. They don't necessarily practice their faith, but they believe that they're born into it, so they just have to abide by it. They're cultural Hindus. The other ones are intellectual Hindus who are well versed in their scripture. The next one group are the folk Hindus, who are more of rituals, traditions, keeping up with astrology, magic, ancestor worship, all of those things. Now, Hinduism is a very diverse religion. So, someone who sees an Hindu cannot assume that this is who they are. Okay, they can't. Like, when it comes to Christianity, we have a certain set of doctrines or theology or things that we follow by the text. So we can say that, okay, this, wherever they are, whatever, whichever region they live in, they follow these principles because it is set in the Bible. We have doctrines, theologies and things that we believe in. But Hinduism is different. It's very diverse. So just because a certain Hindu, one person is a certain way, we cannot believe the other Hindu also will be a certain way. One may be a cultural Hindu, another one may be an intellectual Hindu, or maybe another one's a folk Hindu. So there are more than these three groups, okay, of Hinduism. So Hinduism is a diverse religion. But these are just the categories I shared with you, like folk Hindus, intellectual Hindus, and cultural Hindus are just three basic generalizations to help us understand. But there are groups beyond these three. Now, when we look at the Hindu scriptures are the Vedas, the earliest Hindu scriptures are the Vedas, which probably began developing around 1500 BC. Now, Veda means knowledge, and there are four Vedas. One is Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, and Athar Veda. So these are the four Vedas that are available. Now, each Veda is divided into four parts. One is mantras, another one is brahmanas, another one is aryanakas, and then the Upanishads. And the Upanishads are also known, called as Shruti, meaning that which is heard. Okay, let me explain this again. Each Veda is divided into four parts. The first one is mantras. Now, mantras means verses or hymns sung during the rituals. The second one is brahmanas, which is explanation of the verses. Third one is aranyakas. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Aranyakas, reflections on the meaning of the verses. The fourth one are the Upanishads, which is the mystical interpretation of the verses. And this is also known as Shruti. With that meaning, the word Shruti means that which is heard. So Shruti literature in Hinduism is equivalent to a revealed scripture. Now, in addition to these primary writings, there are also secondary writings, which is called as Smriti. meaning remembered. Now, Smriti writings include the Ramayana, that is Rama's way, and Mahabharata, the great story epics. Now, within the Mahabharata is the Bhagavad Gita, which is the most popular of all Hindu scriptures, and with the main character as Krishna. The Smriti scriptures are technically not as authoritative as Shruti, though they have a much stronger influence on the culture of India through their popularity. So, they have scriptures that are divided into Shruti, that which is heard, and Smriti, that which is remembered. So the mantras, the brahmanas, the aranyakas, the Upanishads, all of that are known as Shrutis. In addition, Ramayana, Mahabharata, all of those come under Smriti. Now, although Shruti has a much stronger, it's more authoritative, Smriti is is more known among people. So it has a big influence on the culture of India today. So if you look at TV shows, they have TV shows on the Mahabharatas and all of that. So all of that come under Smriti. That means something which is remembered. There are also other Smriti scriptures which include the Puranas, the Darshanas, the Sutras, the Tantras, the Vedangas. So all of these things are there. Now, I'm not going to go into detail because that's not the point of the study. It's just to give you an overview. Now, there are symbols that Hinduism follows. The one that we know is the sign Om. Om is basically a sound that has no literal meaning, but it is supposed to represent the totality of the spiritual universe. So similar to how we have a sign or a symbol in Christianity that is very important, that is a sign, the cross. In Hinduism, it is a sign Om. In Buddhism, the swastika is a prevalent symbolism. Okay, even in Hinduism, the swastika is a prevalent emblem. However, it's not used widely in the West due to its resemblance with the Hitler group. Although they don't have connections, however, it's avoided just to avoid misunderstandings with Hinduism. All right. So there are some major beliefs in Hinduism. Now, not all believe in the same thing, but there are a few things that most Hindus agree on. The first one is karma. Most Hindus agree that life is hard, it's full of suffering, and what is worse is that once you're done with this life, you have to go through another life of suffering. You have to go through another one, and so on. So they believe that there are, as soon as you're done with this life, you're going to be reincarnated into the next one. And in the next life, you may not be a human being. You could be an animal. You could come back as a bird, as a worm, as an insect, anything. So there's an endless cycle of karma. So Hindus look up to certain gods to break free from that cycle of karma. So this is something that most Hindus agree on. The other thing that most Hindus agree on are ritual obligations. So even if there are certain differences between a cultural Hindu or an intellectual Hindu or a folk Hindu, most of them believe, regardless of whatever they hold on to, there are certain rituals they have to keep and that has to be followed. So they believe in ritual obligations. That's one of the basic things they hold on to. So these are a couple of things. There are more that they agree on, more things that they agree on, but I just shared two of those with you. I want to go to the next part of the content. That is why I'm skipping a few here. Now, what is their view on Jesus? How do they see Jesus? This is our main focus today. Our main focus is not to give a study on the history of Hinduism, though we did it just to gain a certain idea. In fact, if you were to actually do a proper study on Hinduism, you need like a couple of sessions to cover that, because there's a lot of detail that we can go through. And, as I was studying about Hinduism today, I realized a lot of things that I see very often, in my day-to-day life. And, then it began to make sense. Why do Hindus do this? Why do they do certain things? All those things make a lot of sense. And I believe that for us as Christians living in a Hindu society, in a Hindu nation, it's important for us to gain an understanding of who they are, what their culture is, and why do they do what they do. So it's very important for us. Now, if you want me to recommend a certain kind of resource that might be helpful, I would recommend this website called as Carm Apologetics, CARM Apologetics. I think it is run by a person called Matt Slick. He has written a lot of articles on different religions, and so I've been following him since my college days, from the time I was in college. Great material and good research, and I've taken some material from there for the study for today as well. So if you want to learn more in detail, you can go to that website to learn more on Hinduism. So what is their view on Jesus? How do Hindus see Jesus? Now, first is they see Jesus as a holy man. They say Jesus was a holy man. Most Hindus evaluate spirituality on the basis of two things. Okay, they evaluate spirituality on the basis of two things. First is behavior, and second is practice. If someone follows virtues such as tolerance, love, non-violence, self-sacrifice, humility, when someone follows these attributes, they are held in high esteem, and they are known as holy men, known as sadhu. So according to this, by this criteria, Jesus qualifies as a Hindu saint on the basis of his life and teaching, because Jesus advocated ways of tolerance, of humility. He gave himself up on the cross. So they see Jesus as a Hindu saint. So they call Jesus as a holy man. And they call Jesus as a holy man even because of the things that he taught and the way he lived his life. Their second view of Jesus is that they see Jesus as a wise teacher. Now, most Hindus respect the teachings of Jesus, and some have even committed themselves to this teaching. For example, Mahatma Gandhi. He admired the teaching of Jesus, particularly the teaching on the Sermon on the Mount. Though he was not interested in following Jesus as a god or anything, or as a true historical character, rather, Gandhi saw Jesus as a symbol of superior ethics, and he revered his teachings. So that is where that is what Gandhi believed, and that is something that Gandhi held on to. So he didn't follow Jesus as his God or anything, but he saw Jesus as a symbol of superior ethics and highly honored and revered his teaching. And this is also the view that often many Hindus take. So they see Jesus as a great teacher, as a wise teacher. His teachings were amazing, practical, and something that we need to adapt. So that's how they saw Jesus, as a wise teacher. Now, others see Jesus as a God, not the God, a God. There's a big difference in that. Now, as Christians, we see Jesus as the God. He is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through him. So Jesus is God, and God alone is the God. But Hindus see Jesus as a God. Now, some Hindus, not all, but some Hindus are more willing to acknowledge Jesus as divine. Usually this shouldn't happen at this time, but there's someone else, I believe, upstairs that's doing it. Let me try to lower the volume so that it's not hard. So Hindus see Jesus as a God. Some Hindus are more than willing to acknowledge Jesus as divine. They don't see him as uniquely divine, but they see him as divine. I'm sure you might have seen at some point, you may have walked into a restaurant or a certain place, and you'd have seen a picture of Hindu gods, and in the midst of them you'll see a picture of it's not a picture of Jesus, but an illustration of Jesus. So they consider Jesus as a God. Now, there are several times I've seen things like that, and I wondered, why do they do that? Because though they follow a different religion, a different set of beliefs and all of that, why do they have Jesus over there? Now, they have that because they believe Jesus was a God. not the God, but a God. So they believe he was divine, so they include Jesus in one of the deities that they follow. However, they don't see Jesus as the only way to God. Instead, they see Jesus as the perfect example of self realization. If you look at Buddhism also acknowledged Jesus lived a very sacrificial life and had compassion and all of that. And they believe that Jesus was an enlightened man. He was someone who reached that level of spirituality. They see him as an enlightened man. In the 14th century Zen master Gazan Joseki referred to Jesus as an enlightened man. So the Hindus say that Jesus is the perfect example of self-realization. Many see Jesus as a symbol of what humans can attain rather than seeing him as a true historical person. So, when it comes to Christianity, we hold on to the who Jesus is as God and also the historical Jesus as well, because his life on earth, his life as a man, plays a huge importance in the Christian faith. However, Hinduism is most of the time focuses on seeing Jesus as a symbol of what humans can become. So you can become like Jesus in terms of his humility, self-sacrifice, and all his wonderful attributes, rather than seeing him as a true historical person who lived. Some may see Jesus as a God man of sorts. They would cite other examples such as Rama, Krishna, and Buddha and say Jesus is simply one of those many Ishtas or form of the divine in the history of mankind. Now, often a lot of Hindus see Jesus as an acharya, a sadhu or an avatar. Now, who is an acharya? Acharya is a religious teacher or a spiritual guide in Hinduism or Buddhism. Sadhu is a holy person. Like I shared before, they see Jesus as a holy man. Some see Jesus as avatar. Avatar is basically the material appearance or incarnation of a powerful deity or spirit on earth. Sorry about that. Let me repeat that again. Avatar is basically a material appearance or incarnation of a powerful deity or spirit on earth. Now, there were some Hindus who claim that Hare Krishna, some Hindus and some Hare Krishnas claim that Jesus was predicted or prophesied in their scripture in the Bhavashya Purana. So they claim those things. Now, we don't know how much of that is true. There's not much to say about it as far as I've seen and read, but they make certain claims. As the last part, we're going to look at Krishna and Christ. And often, there are Hindus who see Jesus Christ as Krishna. And because the name is kind of, in terms of pronunciation, it's kind of close. They see Christ and Krishna as almost the same thing. And the claims that they make is that there are many similarities between Christ and Krishna. They say that Krishna was conceived miraculously and both had royal genealogy. So Krishna was conceived miraculously and even Jesus was conceived and both had royal genealogies. And Krishna was threatened with deaths by a wicked ruler. Christ was also threatened with death by a wicked ruler. And they say that Krishna and Christ were human incarnations of a triune God. Both were tempted by demons, both worked miracles, both transfigured themselves, and both predicted their own deaths. So they say that Krishna and Christ are almost the same. Some see Jesus Christ as Krishna. And they also say that Krishna rose from the dead and ascended into heaven. Christ also rose from the dead and ascended into heaven. Christ died a gruesome death on a cross, while Krishna died by an arrow to his heel. Both Christianity and the religion of Krishna are theologies of grace. I'm sure you've heard of this group called the ISKCON. I think it's called as the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. So there's a huge movement, and if you probably, I know I'm not sure about this, but if you talk to them, they might say Jesus is Krishna. They won't see much of a difference between both, because they say the teaching of Krishna is grace, and even the teaching of Jesus is also grace. But what they also claim is that they say that Krishna's favor appears to go further than Christ. Because what happens is there is a battle that takes place between Krishna and demons. Now, Krishna kills the demons, and after that, he sends those demons to heaven, basically showing how gracious Krishna is. And also, there was a hunter who accidentally kills Krishna. But instead of Krishna taking revenge on him, he is forgiven of all his karmic debt, So they say that Krishna is the 8th incarnation of the Hindu god Vishnu, who according to Hindu belief has come in every cosmic age to save humankind from its sin and folly. So when you look at the avatars that have come, Hindus believe that there were 10 avatars. Let me pull up the list. There were 10 avatars. The first one was Matsya. Vishnu appeared as a fish to save humanity from a flood by guiding the sage Manu to build a boat. Kurma, Vishnu appeared as a tortoise. And Varaha, Vishnu appeared as a boar. B-O-A-R, boar. And the fourth avatar of Vishnu is Narasimha. Vishnu appears as a man-lion. And the fifth one is Vamana. Vishnu appears as a dwarf. The third is Parashurama. Vishnu appears as Parashurama. The 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The seventh avatar of Vishnu is as Rama. Rama, an ideal king who is courageous, dutiful, and devoted to his people. And the seventh one is Krishna. So the seventh avatar of Krishna, seventh avatar of Vishnu, he appears as Krishna. Now, according to Hinduism, there have been 9 avatars out of the 10. 9 avatars are revealed so far. So the 9th avatar is Buddha. Vishnu appears as Buddha, 9th avatar in the Vaishnava tradition of Hinduism. So there have been about, out of the 10, 9 avatars have been revealed. Now what the Hindus, not all, but some teach like they're saying, the 10th and the final avatar of Vishnu has very striking similarities to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Because Hindus believe that when Krishna comes, when he takes the 10th avatar, he will come as a great warrior to destroy all the unbelievers with his mighty sword. Okay. Now this may seem very similar to the story of Revelation. We see that Jesus is going to come a second time, but he's not going to come as a lamb or a savior, but he's going to come to judge the world. So those who choose Christ will live with Christ forever, but those who reject Christ will be thrown into a lake of fire. Now similarly, there are certain Hindus who teach that the 10th avatar of Vishnu is called as Kalki. He's going to come, and when he comes, it will be a destruction of unbelievers, similar to what we're talking about in Christianity. So they say there's a lot of connection between Hinduism and Christianity. So there is a lot of similarity between Krishna and Christ. So when you talk to some Hindus, especially the ones that are part of the ISKCON, they will draw a lot of similarities between them, between Jesus and Krishna. However, we should be clear as to who Jesus is according to the Bible. Okay. Now, when we come to an understanding, when we come to a proper understanding, then we'll be able to distinguish the differences, irrespective of the teaching here. So, these are the views of Jesus on. These are the views of Hinduism on Jesus. All right. So, let me just recap quickly. They see Jesus as a holy man, a wise teacher. They see him as a god, and then they see him as an acharya, a great spiritual guide in Hinduism or Buddhism. They see him as an avatar. They believe that he will come as the 10th avatar. Some say the 10th avatar is basically Jesus. A lot of teachings around that, but we don't know for sure. However, there is a group that believes that Krishna and Christ are the same because both of them had a miraculous conception. When they were born, someone evil wanted to destroy them, and they were both tempted by demons, worked miracles, both transfigured themselves, and also they predicted their own deaths. So they say Krishna arose from the dead, Christ also arose from the dead. But Krishna seems to be more gracious than Christ himself. That is their teaching. And they say that Krishna is the eighth incarnation of the Hindu god Vishnu. So the purpose of all these avatars, now you may ask, what is the purpose of these 10 avatars? It is to basically save humanity from sin and folly. That is what they teach. So the final thing is, they believe that the Vishnu's 10th and final incarnation has striking similarities with the second coming of Christ, which means that the 10th one could be Jesus himself. That is what they believe. All right. So with this, I'm going to close this session. I hope this has been helpful, help you understand certain details about Hinduism and also their views on Christianity. If you have more questions, please feel free to post it in the comments, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. So, and also share this video with someone who would like to learn about different religions and their perspective on Jesus. I'm planning to re-edit the first video I did. The first video I did was, who is Jesus according to the Bible? There are certain things I want to re-edit and post probably this week or the next week or anytime soon. I will be posting that. I request you to share this with your friends and family so that they can learn more about the society in which we live, the culture in which we live. A couple of years ago, I had called someone to install a certain thing in my house, and as I was talking to him, he had a Christian name and all that, and I was talking to him, and then I slowly found out that he's a Jehovah's Witness guy. Okay, and he asked me what I do. I said I'm a pastor. So all of a sudden the conversation between him and me became a little awkward. He didn't speak much. And I was waiting for an opportunity to say something, but I didn't. So interesting things like that can happen. Now, if you're aware of who people are, what their understanding is, and what their perspective on Jesus is, you'll be able to share in a much better way. You'll be able to understand and talk to them in a much better way. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has given some insight on the subject. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. God bless you. Thank you for joining us today. Have a blessed evening. God bless you.